How sweet are thy words unto my taste, yea, sweeter than honey to my mouth. Through thy precepts I get understanding, therefore I hate every false way. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, and a light unto my path.
Because all flesh is as grass, and all the glory of man as the flower of the grass. The grass withers, and the flower falls away, but the word of the Lord endures forever. Now this is the word which by the gospel was preached to you.
One of the great chapters in the book of Job, Job chapter 28, where can wisdom be found, would be the theme of that chapter. That's a question that's asked in verse 12. The answer to that is in the final verse of that chapter, but there is a statement that is made with regard to the value of wisdom. In Job chapter 28 and verse 18, the price of wisdom is above rubies. There is only one other occasion in the scriptures where a comparison is made to demonstrate great value that is similar to that with regards to wisdom, and that wisdom was of God. And that's found in Proverbs chapter 31 and verse 10, where Solomon writes, "Who can find a virtuous woman?" Now watch this, "for her price is far above rubies." Hello and welcome to the Biblical Christianity Podcast. I'm Ronnie Scherfus, one of the instructors at the Texas School of Preaching. With me today, Brother Terrence Brownlow Dindy, the director of the school, also one of the teachers here. Brother Tom Moore serves as Dean of Students, also one of the teachers here. Today, we are going to be bringing to a close a series of studies with regards to great women in the Bible. We have considered Eve, Esther, also Abigail. These ladies were known for great character, but then also we've considered Jezebel. She was more infamous for her great wickedness. But today, from Job chapter 31, or rather Proverbs chapter 31, we're going to consider the virtuous woman and just some of the positive qualities and characteristics that we find in the life of this woman. Now, to begin, I want to provide just a little bit of a foundation and a background for this idea, this word virtuous. We need to really have a good understanding of this term as we see it here. So bear with me as we consider this. Proverbs chapter 31 and verse 10, who can find a virtuous woman? What do we mean by virtuous? Well, the Hebrew term that's translated virtuous is found over 240 times in the Old Testament, so a very common word. And what's interesting about this, that is most often found, the primary use of it is in a military context, and it has to do with strength or power. In fact, David uses this word to emphasize God's power. In Psalm 110, verse 3, the people shall be willing in the day of thy power. So the primary use of this Hebrew term has to do with power and with strength. The secondary usage, and this is how we're going to see this with regards to this particular woman, the virtuous woman, here it's a general ability, but with an emphasis on moral worth or moral strength. And this is the same term that Moses used to describe the elders that were selected to judge the affairs of Israel in Exodus 18:21. Moreover, thou shalt provide out of all the people, and here able men. But then Moses provides some context of their character. And I think this is also going to help us see who this woman is. These able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness. So when we talk about the virtuous woman, we're talking about a woman of moral strength, of great moral value, and also a woman who has great abilities, a woman who fears God, and she walks in truth. Now, with that, let's consider Proverbs 31, verse 11 and 12. And whenever I take these two verses, I look at them, a particular point of emphasis here is going to be trustworthiness or confidence. Now, let me read these two verses. The heart of her husband does safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. Now, I want to key in on this phrase, safely trust. Whenever we think about this, at least I do when I'm reading from this chapter, safely trust, and I think of my wife, and I can safely trust in her. My mind goes to, I can trust in her to maintain our marriage relationship, the vow and the oath of our marriage bed. We have examples in the scriptures where there are women that do not. We think of Potiphar's wife in Genesis chapter 39 as she pursues Joseph. But this word is not emphasizing the trust of fidelity. The idea here is boldness or confidence. In fact, it's translated bold in Proverbs 28:1. The wicked man flee when no man pursueth, but the righteous are bold as a lion. And so here to have confidence in. And so her husband, he trusts in her in the sense that he has confidence that she can guide and manage the household affairs. Now, how valuable is such a woman to her husband and to her home?
Obviously extremely valuable, Brother Ronnie. We look at the fact that where a marriage is concerned, you have two that become one. You go back to the book of Genesis and you see that at the very outset in Genesis chapter 2 and verse 23, 24, I believe it is there, where the assessment of the marriage at that early stage is, therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, shall cleave unto his wife. They are formerly twain, but now will become one. No more, two, but one flesh. And of course, you see that repeated throughout the New Testament. Whenever Christ takes the opportunity to teach on marriage in Matthew chapter 19, you definitely see that in Paul's writings on marriage in places like the book of Ephesians chapter 5, beginning at verse number 22, going down to verse number 32. And so that exact phrase quoted. And so whenever you have someone that is your soulmate, that completes you, that makes you one, takes two of you and you guys become one, then obviously it's going to be of necessity that there's going to be able to be a very high degree of trust, or have to be a very high degree of trust between you. Again, we're in a partnership that is a lifelong partnership, and everything that is important, everything that is imperative to life, is wrapped up in that partnership. I'm talking about my spirituality, her spirituality. I'm talking about the raising of our children. I'm talking about our livelihood, our health, physically, spiritually, mentally, psychologically, and otherwise. All these things are intertwined together for life if we're doing marriage the way the Bible dictates that it be done. And so therefore, man, can you imagine having someone that is so intimately connected to you in that way, but you couldn't trust them? That would be problematic.
Most of the marriage counseling that I've done over the years, the difficulty is a lack of trust, whether it be from the sexual bed, when a cat's away, the mice will play type of scenario, or just the overall. The thing that really strikes me about these two verses is verse 12. She doeth him good, not evil. And here's a phrase that I think we need to focus on: all the days of her life. Sometimes marriages start out great. She's a great wife, and we're talking from the woman's standpoint today. So women, don't get mad if we don't talk about the husband so much today. It's more about the wife, and we may talk about the husband later on. But when a wife does not uh, show forth her wares in a great way when in her later days, when she did in her early days, that's a difficulty that causes, because a lot of marriages start out great, they end up bad. And the reason is that she is not doing good to her husband all the days of her life. It doesn't like you get out of jail free card when you've been married 20 years.
Right.
I've seen marriages break up after they've been married 20 and 30 years, and it's because they're not doing good all the days of their life.
Whenever you think about that, as a marriage progresses, as God would have it, that relationship should be growing stronger. That trust and confidence should be getting stronger between the husband and the wife. But it is the case that sometimes, and again, we're speaking with regards to the virtuous woman. So our emphasis here is on the woman and her role in this marriage and in the home. Sometimes, we may see someone become wasteful and not frugal with the finances.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, Brother Ronnie. When you look at that term evil, sometimes the King James Version uses that term, and the American Standard as well. I guess pretty much, yeah, most of the translations we're familiar with will take that term evil, whether you see it in the Old Covenant or the New, and it's not always the idea of doing something sinful. Sometimes the word evil simply is a reference to adversity. The Bible talks about God doing evil to people. Well, that's when we know He's not doing anything sinful. We know that's not the case. It's talking about the idea of bringing adversity sometimes into the lives of people as a form of punishment or something like that, justice or something of that nature. And so we look at this idea of evil. It's not necessarily this she might be doing something simple to him, but like you mentioned, she might be doing things that are adverse, to the well-being of the family, of the household. Like I said, it's,
Mhm.
not, being wasteful with finances, things like that. I've seen marriages that go to shambles because of that. Tom
Yeah.
was kind of alluding to the idea of sometimes sexual aspect of the relationship, the intimacy, being compromised for some reason or another, and how that could be harmful to their marriage relationship. But the finances, how she's taking care of the children, what kind of responsibilities are being met or not being met in regards to the keeping of the house. There's all types of things. His emotions, her own emotions, taking care of herself.
Yeah.
Sometimes the way a person takes care of themselves or refuses to do such can also cause adversity in the life of their partner,
Yeah.
their spouse.
When you think about the actual Hebrew, it is pronounced Ray, and has reference to from Hebrew lexicons to evil, distress, bad, evil, misery, injury, calamity, and all of these things can come. Sometimes you can bring calamity onto a family and not necessarily be any kind of a sinful action, but we've already mentioned maybe you bring calamity onto a family because of bad financial choices and things of that nature. But here's a man who trusts his wife that all the days of his life, he is not going to receive any kind of bad, evil, calamity from his wife because she is one whom the husband can trust in.
Man,
There's nothing better than to have that full trust in your wife.
That's right. Your wife is your best friend, should be able to have all confidence, as it is here, bold confidence in our mates, in our best friends, in our wives. And just kind of close out this particular thought. Solomon mentions a virtuous woman again in chapter 12 and verse 4, and we see the great contrast. A virtuous woman is a crown to her husband. You
Mhm.
think of a crown, we think of victory, or something that has been greatly received. But now here's the contrast: she that maketh ashamed is as rottenness to the bones. And when you talk about adversity, or you talk about misery, a man who in his marriage relationship, and if you put the shoe on the other foot, a woman who can't trust in her husband to provide as he needs to provide and fulfill
Mhm.
his role and
Yeah.
obligations, both of them, either of them, would have a life full of just misery.
I noticed in your notes here that you had a phrase, she does not hide things from him.
Mhm.
And I think that's very crucial. That you're open book. You're very transparent. I'm going to be doing a marriage seminar this weekend. That's one of the things I'm going to be talking about is being very transparent
Mhm.
in your marriage. No secrets, so they can fully trust in one another.
Absolutely. No surprises there. Again, especially when you talk about, things such as finances, whatever the case may be. Like I said, we need to be open books with one another. And like you mentioned, Ronnie, this definitely goes both ways when we're not uh, picking on women. As a matter of fact, we're trying to exalt them here in this particular
Hmm.
text because that's what Proverbs 31 does is exalt the value of a virtuous wife. But man, we definitely know this goes both ways. Both parties, the husband and wife, could either be detrimental or an asset to the marriage arrangement.
I want to add just one more thing, and then we're going to move on to industriousness, the
Mhm.
industrious character of this woman. You mentioned, Brother Tom, hiding things. And you talk about really destroying trust and confidence.
Mm.
And this is just something it might seem very small and insignificant to some, but it really is a confidence builder, something that my wife and I do. If I happen to be texting, let's say that I'm texting Miss Sheena, I'm texting your wife,
Mm.
I'm going to send her the text, but I'll include my wife on that text just so
Yeah.
she knows. If she's going to be texting Tom, she includes me on that just so that we know. I had to have a communication here but it is complete, full trust and confidence.
Mhm.
That's how a husband and wife relationship ought to be.
Yeah.
Yes,
And, and you do that not only because you don't want to cause any difficulty that doesn't need to be there, So just being open and transparent about this. I will get text and from a lady or a girl, and I say I'll show it to my
Right,
wife,
right.
Yeah. So that the trust stays there.
Right.
Yes,
And not
sir.
only stays, but grows.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the industriousness of this woman, the virtuous woman, verses 13 and 14. There's two or three things I want to note here. She seeketh wool and flax. Well, we see there the provisions, that she's going to bring into the home, provide for the home, and worketh willingly with her hands. I want to spend some time on that particular verse. She is like the merchant's ships. And so we see she goes to extreme. She goes above and beyond. She bringeth her food from afar. Now, I want to take some time just to emphasize something here and then maybe throw a question out. All of her industry, and whenever we look at this chapter and we see the activity of this woman, the industriousness of this woman, how she labors not only within the home in the domestic setting, but also outside of the home. She also is laboring outside of the home. There are many who use the virtuous woman to justify a woman seeking a career. Now, I want to emphasize here, I'm not talking about just a woman working outside the home, but some would go here with regards to seeking a career. And I just want to say we need to be careful that this woman was not seeking a career to make a name for herself. Some women, they want a name for themselves. They're seeking wealth. They want to make their mark. They've become dissatisfied as the homemaker. They want to make a political statement. This woman was not seeking to change society. You know how society looks at the role of the woman. She was laboring for her husband and for her household. Now, with that thought in mind, how can the home suffer when a wife and a mother chooses career over home and family?
I think that's the key there, over.
Yes, it is, exactly.
Because I've known a lot of women who have a career, but also a great mother. I've seen a lot of them. They raise their children, then they go for their career,
Exactly.
things of that nature. But I think the key phrase is over, because the family, the home, is the number one important thing for a wife to be a part of.
Yeah, you mentioned something very, very interesting there, Brother Tom. Sometimes women will go ahead and get their children raised the way they should, and go for a career afterwards. Yeah, man. I mean, you look at Titus chapter 2, and of course, this is the big deal, man. This is a cat out of the bag. Everybody that has a problem with this they want to try to pit Proverbs 31 verses or against Titus chapter 2, where Paul tells Titus very plainly, there's nothing ambiguous about it, that the older women are to teach younger women to be above or among many other things, lovers of their husbands, their children, discreet, chaste, keepers at home. And again, there's nothing ambiguous about that. I just listened to a quote. I just read a quote from Thomas Sowell a little bit earlier today. It says something to this effect. I have to paraphrase it because I read it just real quickly, but something to the effect that oftentimes the truth is not complicated. It's the attempts to evade the truth that get complicated. And man, what a true statement that is. Paul is not ambiguous here. The words, even in the Greek language, are extremely clear, where God is telling these women what their main scope of endeavor is to be, and that is taking care of their homes. And whenever their homes are being neglected, as you mentioned, Brother Ronnie, in search of the misappropriation of roles that has become very common in this country, especially for the last 60 years, with this idea of the feminist movement and trying to switch roles between men and women. Look, the Bible can't be pitted against itself. God means what he means. And when we look at this virtuous woman, yes, this is a woman who is contributing mightily to her household. She's doing the things she needs to do. She's going out and she's getting food. She's making things to be able to take to the market and to sell. But again, this is a far cry. And we're going to be honest with the scriptures. This is a far cry from what we see being pushed on our precious women in the United States of America today.
I see this woman going out and gleaning in the fields with her child on her back in a sack. I see this woman bringing bread from afar, selling things, but her kids are right there by her side all the way. She's not neglecting her children, but still bringing in things from the outside, working outside the home, but her children are taken care of right there with her. And so that's the key, I think,
Yeah.
to be able to do both.
And real quickly, man, that's it. I want to emphasize that because again, sometimes we want to filter the Bible through Western 21st century spectacles. And that's always a problem when we try to do that because, again, here's this woman, and we look back at this particular culture at this particular time, dropping off a child at a babysitter is not a part of their culture at this time. And so a lot of times women are neglecting raising their own children in favor of, like you mentioned, trying to make a name or achieve status or wealth in a career, and that's, again, not what the Bible endorses.
So 2 key words we've emphasized here: over and neglect. Whenever a woman neglects the home and puts herself, and that's what it really is, herself over her home and family, that's whenever we have some issues. Now, Proverbs 31:16, there's some emphasis here just to kind of bring this point to a close. She considereth the field and buyeth it. With the fruit of her hand she planteth a vineyard. That was from her own personal labors. She has sewed clothing. She has provided some income, from her own working and laboring, and she then has taken that and uses it to purchase a field, to plant that field, all for the purpose of home and family. Now, verse 13, I want to notice something here. She seeketh wool and flax and worketh willingly with her hands. And then with the 14, she's like the merchant ship, she bringeth her food from afar. Now, she seeketh wool and flax. She doesn't just buy, the cheapest thing out there. She is seeking what's best. She's inspecting this. Now, I want to make a practical application. I want to throw one out here that I don't have down. Question. Looking here at investigating. So she inspects what comes into her home. And think about this from the social aspect of things that have an impact on our children and in our homes spiritually. What should a woman be certain of as far as inspecting and investigating to be sure of what comes into her home is going to affect her children?
Yeah, man, that's such a great question, Brother Ronnie, and so very relevant, man. You take a thought from the scriptures that refers to a time some 3,000 years ago almost, and to show how so relevant today, but it is, man. Look, a lot of times we're bringing in forms of entertainment into our homes. We're bringing in different types of learning and instruction, be it through some type of internet platform or whatever, into our homes. We homeschooled all of our children, and there's times where in order to facilitate mom trying to teach 4 different kids at 4 different levels of their education, we went ahead and subscribed to some of the internet or the online curriculums that were available out there. But man, you better believe, man, we looked through that stuff and we inspected, and I say we, man, this is about her. And Sheena did a lion's share of this. I'm telling you, man, I was the principal, and so whenever she needed some discipline, she'd come get me out of the office or whatever. But as far as the instruction goes, man, that was primarily her. I taught them Greek and apologetics, and that was it, man. She took everything else. So she's got to inspect, make sure that whenever she's got a science curriculum coming in that's not full of evolutionary Darwinian nonsense, which most of them are, she's got to be able to look out for those things so our children's minds are not being infiltrated and permeated with that nonsense, because that will make a difference in their lives.
When you look at verse 13 and verse 14, I always look for action words when I'm studying. She seeketh. Verse 13, she worketh willingly. Verse 14, she bringeth. There's action involved. So let me ask you this question. If she's out there seeking and working and bringing all these things into the family, and somebody else is taking care of her kids, then she's seeking and working and bringing in the wrong things. You take a wife nowadays and she has a job and she leaves her kids at the babysitter. How do you know your baby's not sitting on the couch watching as the world turns all day long, right? For those who don't know, that's a soap opera thing, But if you don't know what's going on with your kids, then you're not being that worthy woman who is actually seeking and willingly working and bringing things into the family that's going to benefit
Be
them.
productive. I think about how many times we're sitting at a restaurant or anywhere in public, and man, you see a 3-year-old child posted up with a cell phone, a
Yeah.
smartphone, and I'm telling you, the kids are sitting there. Was sitting at dinner the other day, my wife and me, and they got this cell phone propped up in front of this child from the time they sit down at the table till the time they get up. And the child is just 100% attention given to this smartphone. And again, man, people don't understand that's the devil's playground these days, man. I mean, I understand social media and smart technology is obviously very, very beneficial in facilitating the spread of the gospel. But man, I'm telling you, if you think only God and Christians are utilizing this stuff, man, we've got our head buried in the sand.
Yeah.
Satan.
In connection with that, I was eating at, I don't like Chick-fil-A, but I ate there because my son and my daughter-in-law wanted to eat there. And we were eating there in Chick-fil-A. Behind us, there were some little kids there on their cell phones. It was so loud. That was obnoxious loud, and I couldn't even understand anything else was going on. But that's the mentality of letting technology be your babysitter.
Yeah. And what are you bringing into your home? That's what
Yeah.
we're talking about here. She's
Right.
making sure that only good things are coming into our house.
Now, think about this too. So I want to move away from the technology side of it. When our children were coming up, they didn't have a lot of access to technology. We just didn't allow it. We also homeschooled, also just as diligent to be sure that the curriculum was what it needed to be. But think about friends that come into the home.
Amen.
Those young children that are coming over, they're gonna be the friends of my children. What is their home like? What is their home life? What are their parents like? What are they being taught? What are they allowed to do? What are they allowed to see on TV? What are they allowed to see on the computer? What are they going to communicate to my children? So rather than coming directly from, online or social media, we also have to, and this is primarily the mother, why the man is out working, and I understand also the wife works also, but if she's at home and she is with those children, she is going to be the one who is especially going to be aware and investigating who's coming into my home, who are these children going to have effect on me.
Have you ever seen a child come into a family scenario that has a cell phone? The family they come into does not have a cell phone. They're looking at their cell phone, and all of a sudden, all your kids are what? They're all hovered right around because they want to see what's going on too. You're bringing something in that you don't want there.
That's right, man. You mentioned that's right. She investigates and inspects what comes into our house. I know we got to move on, man, but I just can't help but think about a funny story from my childhood. It wasn't funny at that time, but it's fun. It's funny now, and I'm very thankful to God because, man, my wife is my jewel, my crown, the apple of my eye, man, and thank God for her every day. But when I think I was in junior high, man, it was one of the first times I decided, man, this little girl gonna be boyfriend and girlfriend together and all of that. And I come home and then I won't mention her name. I come home and told my mother about her, told my mom who she was. And man, the first thing my mom does is get on the phone with my aunt. Man, they start talking about this family, man, and who she is and all this. And she come from a pretty rough family, and especially the women in her family, were not known for having very good reputations as far as sexual promiscuity and things like that. And so my mom gets off the phone with my aunt. I'm just sitting there listening to this conversation, and I just keep on hearing my mom saying, no, And so she gets off the phone. She's like, nope, cut it off, man. I'm just like, man, what? I come home and tell you that I got a girlfriend, and the first thing you say is cut it off. But she knew what she was talking about. And I guarantee you there's experience I had about 2 years later that caused me to thank my mother when I actually witnessed something.
It's like that old country western song, "Thank God for Unanswered Prayers."
Yes, indeed, man. Thank God for good mothers.
Yeah.
That's
Dude,
what we're
that's the
talking about.
blessing of a virtuous woman, an excellent woman, a worthy woman of great moral strength who fears God and walks in the ways of God. Now, I want to stay in this particular text here, verse 13, because this we've read this a couple of times, and you brought it up, and I want to put an emphasis on she worketh willingly with her hands. And I want to emphasize the word willingly here, because the fact that she is doing this willingly, and in the Hebrew word, as I understand from reading lexicons, there is the sense of delight. She finds delight in her work as a mother, as a wife, her role. She is not dissatisfied, she is satisfied. She's not unfulfilled, she is fulfilled. It's not drudgery. She doesn't feel like life has passed her by. Now, here's my question for you gentlemen. Why should a woman have delight in and find satisfaction in being a mother and a wife at home?
Well, for number one, this is an honor that God has bestowed upon her. Has nothing that any man can do. I don't care how loony and kooky our nation gets right now. Men are not capable of being wives or mothers and doing the things and fulfilling the roles that God has given to the wife and the mother in the home. And so it's an honor that God has bestowed upon her. Why should she be delighted in what she does rather than disgruntled because the world around her is telling her that she should be disgruntled? It's because the honor that God has bestowed upon this position, man. Whenever God created Eve for Adam, and he created the crown jewel of creation, the apple of his eye, the beautiful jewel of the home, and everything that she brings to the home. And we talked about this already whenever we looked at Eve. And God brings all of his wisdom, all of his love, all of his care and concern for the home into it, in bringing Eve or creating Eve for Adam. And so, for number one, my mind goes to the fact this is a God bestowed honor.
Yeah.
That's the reason why she ought to be happy.
I find it interesting that that word there for willingly, since you brought it up, I just can't pass it up. Hepes is the Hebrew word. And what's interesting to me is that in Psalm 1 and verse 2, in his law he doth delight. That's the same word. He delights in the law of God day and night, and she works with that same delight with her hands for her family.
And the question, and that's the key too, Brother Tom. Last two words you said, or last three words you said, for her family. For her family. What woman in her right mind does not want to do what is best for her family? Now, unfortunately, we got a lot of women in this world not in their right minds, but this virtuous woman we're discussing here is that woman who is in her right mind, and she wants what is best for both husband and children.
And I think there's also a sense of delight, obviously, the fact she's fulfilling a role that God has given. She's not rebelling against that role. She's not trying to tweak that role or make it her own role. She's fulfilling and satisfying the role. That's a heavenly role given by God. But also, after the years go by, she looks and sees her family and that close relationship of the family where there's unity. There's some families that, there's maybe a Thanksgiving get together. Well, we can't ask this son, or we can't ask this daughter, or this brother, or this sister, because there's so much animosity.
Yeah.
Well, what a great delight in being for parents, husband and wife, mother and father.
Yeah.
Here emphasizing the mother, to raise up a family that is unified. Well, one more thing I want to consider, and then we're going to have to draw our study to a close. And it's from verse 15. And I want you to maybe give some personal observations. This is the self-sacrificing nature of this woman. She riseth also while it is yet night. How many times has my wife, while I'm asleep, she's up doing, and giveth meat to her household and a portion to her maids? And so she's sacrificing sleep. She's sacrificing comfort to ensure her household is properly cared for. So what are maybe some personal observations from your own home of how your own wives have made some sacrifices for their families?
Yeah, just very practically speaking, man, it's what you're looking at here, man. It's not far from the exact scenario that you see in this text, man. Before I get out of bed, a lot of times what wakes me up in the morning is the smell of bacon, coffee brewing, bro. I'm telling you, man. So yes, my wife is up in there. She knows that, we work together, but I got obligations here at the school before she does. And but she's up nonetheless, man, frying up some bacon and scrambling some eggs and brewing some coffee. That's for her. I don't drink
Yeah.
coffee. That's for her, though. But the bacon's for me because she doesn't eat bacon, but she's doing that before I even get out of bed.
Yeah. Think about the rising early. Sometimes we might even think going to bed late
Yeah, that too.
because she's up with a sick child. You've got to go to work the next day. She's going to stay up all night with that child. A mom feeds the baby. We kind of get it easy sometimes. Mama has to get up middle of the night to feed the baby. We don't. Things of that nature. So she's up and willingly. And I think it gets back to working willingly. She willingly does these things. She's not belly aching and complaining. I had to stay up late last night. She willingly did it. I got to get up early. And I wish I could. No, she does it willingly because she cares for her family.
Yeah, and I love the part too, Brother Ronnie says not only for her family, but she's got something prepared for her maidens, her servants, if you will. And I mean, how many times have I seen my wife in the kitchen, like I said, sometimes staying up late because she's a night owl as well. But staying up late and fixing banana bread, and who you fixing that for? Oh yeah, I'm taking this to taking this to one of the instructors, or to fixing buttermilk pies for Tom and Jason, and
Yeah.
stuff like that because they always ask for. But fixing for our widows at BCS, or doing something, for somebody that's sick or somebody that just had a child, man. We got a ton of young families and babies being born everywhere at BCS. And so she'll fix some things and hand out. And just, it's just lovely. That's what God is describing here. And that's what our women are trying to pattern themselves after. And we thank God for this beautiful text. And you think about this, and we're going to have to bring our study to a close here. You think about this woman and think about her daughters. Her daughters now look at their mother as a wife. That's how I'm supposed to be as a wife. As a mother, oh, this is how I conduct myself, and this is how I manage and guide my home, just as my mother did. And whenever there is a virtuous, godly, excellent, moral, a woman who is morally strong, who conducts herself as God would have her to do in her home, then that perpetuates the Christian home, the godly home, for generations.
So when you're looking for a wife, maybe you ought to start looking at her mama
No, that's right.
before you look at her, because she's going to learn from her mama.
You better believe it.
I want to close it with a verse. I'm just going to read the verse and make a comment, and then we'll close our study for today. Inner beauty. Inner beauty. And this is toward the close of the chapter, Proverbs 31, verse 30. Favor is deceitful and beauty is vain. Now, I do not assume that this was a woman who was not a beautiful woman.
Mhm.
That's not the point being made.
Mhm.
The point is being made of her inner beauty. But a woman that feareth the Lord,
Mm.
she shall be praised. And so this virtuous woman, a woman of great moral strength, a woman who walked in the light of God, a woman who was a picture of godliness and holiness, a woman who practically devoted herself to the betterment, the improvement, the rising up, not of her own self, of her own name, though her name would certainly rise up by her own children, her own family, her husband, and her children will sing her praises. She doesn't sing her own praises. All of her devotion is to her household. The great inner beauty of the virtuous woman. We greatly appreciate you joining us in our study today. We hope that this series of studies of great women from the Bible has been beneficial to you as much as it's been beneficial for us for preparing it. We look forward to the opportunity to study with you again on our podcast.